Yeah, I decided to give us a bit of a change of scenery
Yeah.
because, well, I want to be doing artwork in that corner soon.
Okay.
So, yeah, move us over here for a while.
See?
And I'm going to, um, James last summer, he was teaching me how to write poetry. And so I've just been working on revisions and stuff and looking at some
The
of my
last
old,
little one.
yeah, the last little one. And so anyway, over the winter, so he went through some of my stuff with me, and this one here, he said his comments were, "Grassy weave will sound old-fashioned like written 200 years ago. Same with Mourn. James says not publishable." He doesn't want it.
I meant to say, given its state. I mean, I wasn't saying forever, ever, whatever. In other words,
Anyway.
it needed work. That's all I was saying.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna publish this on my blog post so that you can see that like whatever you're working on right now for poetry, because I'm wanting to encourage all of the greens to do is, and that would be the workers of this world, is to realize just how creative they are.
Passive workers.
Yeah. So
Briggs Meyer.
the passive people, they tend to just go along with what they're told. So when they're told that they're really their lot in life, that's, you know, they can be a receptionist at a whatever licensing office or something, or a clerk at a grocery store, and that's their lot in life. You know, they can't really achieve any better than that, so just be happy with working for a pittance for somebody else.
Working for a pittance and not getting credit for the work, you know,
Yeah.
like some superior being, an aggressive dictator or a aggressive propagandist will take credit for it.
Or at the same time, you know, they're having aggressive propagandists on the airwaves in schools, telling them,
Schools
look,
and especially universities.
you can become just like us. You just have to,
yeah.
you know.
We're special, superior
and
beings.
really, all that they're doing when they're trying to say, all you need to do is get confidence in yourself and this and that, and really what they're saying is be aggressive, right? You have to be an aggressive sort of type, and so they're justifying their own economical success,
their parasitical status,
in
parasites
in our society. So they want to actually believe that they're justified to parasitize off of the working class people.
The working class, and also legitimate, the what Briggs Meyer calls blues. We're going to give up the color thing because people have been misinterpreting it. Reds and yellows have been misinterpreting it. So those are the aggressive
propagandists
and dictators have been misinterpreting it, probably intentionally.
So, anyway, so I actually want to encourage, especially Greens, especially the working passive people, to realize that, like with aggressive personality types, they peak by age 25, around there, and then they just don't go anywhere. They do the same sort of thing they've been doing. Mm-hmm. With passive people, they keep learning, they keep growing, and if you have aggressive people in charge of your society, which in most cases they end up being there, because they're aggressive, they'll take it.
It'd be eldest sons.
Then your society really doesn't move ahead very quickly. And in some cases, if there aren't controls on the aggressive people at all, it doesn't move ahead. And the rest of the world goes well ahead of them. And the society, it could be a really cutting edge society at one time, and then it just stays there.
Oftentimes they are severely reactionary. In other words, they will take things back to what they think is some sort of ideal. Commies tend to be that way.
Well, when they start to lose control, then they try to take it back.
Oftentimes with
it doesn't
commies,
help the society.
They're just dreaming up a past that never really existed in the first place.
But anyway, so what I'm trying to do is work on my poetry and stuff like that, and encourage other working passive people to work on their own poetry, work on their own music, sing their own songs. I mean, you guys, you're whistling while you work, but you're whistling somebody else's tune, and that's not right. Whistle your own. You can come up with a better one.
Much better than what the aggressive propagandists come up with. They're not terribly concerned about actual technique or anything like that. An example is free versers. Like they're going around saying, "I've just got to get my soul out there." There's a lot of expressionism and a lot of stuff. I've got to just get my soul out into the universe there and have it dominate or something like that. It's absolutely useless.
So with poetry, I didn't understand it for a long time. I come from a musical family on my dad's side, and so when I was little, I was always singing, always. And I was always a part of a choir and stuff like that. And but yet with poetry, it was when I was a teenager, I guess, is when I was really, I was introduced to nursery rhymes and stuff like that when I was little, and I could hear, but I couldn't hear it completely, like Old Mother Hubbard and Little Miss Muffet. I couldn't, like my dad told me, well, they're the same poem, kind of thing, and I couldn't hear it. I'm like, no, one is Miss Muffet, one is, but then when I was a teenager, I guess I was shy, so I wasn't, I was looking at poetry on paper, and it's not meant to stay on paper. It's meant to say it out loud, and then you hear it. Then you hear what it's supposed to be. So I'm glad that I had this opportunity to learn with James, because I'd write things, but sometimes I could give you an example of that too. What I'd do is I'd count out the syllables or something. I'd go, oh yeah. And then James told me he could tell I was doing that, and he said, you don't hear the syllables. That's not how you do it. You don't hear the syllables. So I'd try all sorts of things. So then he was teaching me, okay, this is what you do. So this beat is da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. And then another one of that, and then da 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 da. So we have 4 accented, ending on the accent, and then 3 accented, ending on the accent, starting with an unaccent. So what is that called when you do that? Is it called
iambic tetrameter, twice over?
Yeah.
And then iambic trimeter.
Okay.
So it's iambic.
Okay. So
and then you've thrown in some rhymes there.
Yeah. Oh.
What's the rhyme scheme? A B A B C C.
These ones are together here with this one.
Is it 6 line?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
And then days. Well, you'll hear it. You'll hear it. I should just read it.
So it's A, B, C, C, B, D, D, B. Something like that. It looks like.
Okay. So, in the presence of royalty. We started early in the morn, and then James said he could have sworn he saw a deer. I gazed through distant grass and seabuckthorn and finally saw a velvet horn that crowned a stag that lazed within sweet clover. Earth was born to cradle him, so weather-worn, so still and looking dazed. He lounged, admiring his domain of Cooley Meadows' rich terrain, a sight ordained for kings. He didn't bother to complain about us thieves, there to obtain his fruit and other things that nature managed to retain, despite the city's concrete rain and all the death it brings. Perhaps he rested to relieve his bulk within the grassy weave, not worn from travel lag, or weary as one might conceive, and stronger than one would believe, so didn't need to brag. And even though we had to leave for years to come, we can retrieve a memory of the stag. So that's it. So I decided to read this one, and I'll post it on the blog post so that you can see, this must be my worst one so far, given the comment. And I don't plan to change it. So it's going to stay just like this, I think. And maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better about your own stuff and think, oh, well, she sticks in grassy weave and mourn and whatever. So I hope it helps you out.
Yeah, it's better to have mourning. So.
Yes, yeah, you told me that.
Yeah. It's tough when you rhyme. It's tough when you got something like a regular rhythm. This is, I was having Pauline try many, many different types of, well, every poem that she wrote. And she might have wrote, how many do you think you wrote?
I should have told you. That one I wrote on my birthday last year. So.
Almost exactly a year ago.
And, well, I started it on July 20th, it says. But anyway.
Working fast. I can remember the occasion and commemorate. That, I believe, was the deer that we weren't sure we were seeing one.
Well, I've needed new glasses for a long time.
Whereas I see pretty well when it comes to distant objects. From my cataract surgery.
Anyway, I was going to make the dog some waffles, but I don't know. I don't know if they deserve it.
Well, one or two of them. Angel had 3 peas this morning.
It's impressive, seeing as the door was wide open. She could have just walked out. Anyway.
Yeah, she's really spoiled. 3.5 pounds of arrogance.
Yeah.
That's the way Chihuahuas often seem to be.
So, you were telling me some news yesterday. Something that happened.
Well, I talked to someone who taught at residence school.
There was something else.
Is that a cocoon hanging down there? Underneath the railing?
Oh yeah, it is too. I don't know who it's from.
You know that big caterpillar you saw on the wall? outside of my place.
It was one of those big green ones that are like the size of your thumb, only like maybe to there, and have the big horn. I can't
he was
remember what
longer
they're
than that.
called. No, like there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what you meant by it. Yeah. I thought you were saying this long.
No.
It's considerably longer.
Yeah.
Anyway, he made it in one of those tubs. I let him on.
Oh, good, he lived.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I can't remember if he's
For
a
a while.
pest or not or whatever. I can't
Well,
remember.
I was
But
feeling.
I have a hard time remembering some of the species and stuff.
Well,
like
I mean, you
that,
just have to review them. I mean, it's pretty well anything you have to use to remember. Anyway, yeah, he ended up there. He would have cooked, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that
like
could
them.
be a poem. Or the fact that we saw him in the wall in the first place. Or whatever.
Well, it's quite impressive.
I mean, the thing about poetry is really the best people to write it are the Greens, honestly. The working passive people, because they're living. They're out living.
They're actually
And
not
so they're
sitting around
experiencing
living
things.
on welfare or stuff
So
like that.
they have something to write about. Some
Yep.
content, right?
Yeah.
They're not just making up some stuff dreaming it out of their heads.
Here's my advice
Manufacturing
to would-be
reality.
poets. Get a job. Get a job. Don't live off the largesse of the government, which is us, real working people.
I mean, everybody should have the opportunity
No
to do
Canada
their own
Council
art
grants.
of whatever
Yeah.
type.
Why do you get Canada Council grants? What you do is you have your buddies, it's a wonderful form of nepotism, who are granting you Canada Council grants, and you grant them Canada Council grants, all out of the largesse of the people actually doing real work. There seems to be this idea amongst the aggressive propagandists that money just grows on trees. No. Money is concretized sweat. Sometimes tears, like the thing, not blood.
And eventually injury. I mean, a lot of
Oh yeah,
I know.
carpal tunnel.
Yeah, like I talked
Overuse
to
injuries.
a lovely passive worker the other day, and she got another steroid shot so that she can keep working because she's had problems with her wrists and she was a teenager. Because
Yeah.
the working passive people work very hard.
Yeah, and
And
they keep working. It's not just hard, continuously.
they don't necessarily have the best diets because they're not, especially when they're, say, working laborers for a landscape company or something.
You're
Well,
tired when you get
they're-
home.
Yeah, I mean, they're working for not very much money. They're working long hours. Sometimes they'll sign a contract or whatever, an agreement that they will bank overtime. So, because they have no choice. And so their employer makes them bank the overtime so that they never have to pay overtime, and they get they get paychecks in the winter hours, in the winter months when they're not working because they've banked all this overtime. But
It's a way of avoiding paying overtime.
it's a way of avoiding paying overtime, and then they can't. Back in the day, they might have been eligible for employment insurance in the winter when they weren't working, but they couldn't get it because they were still on the payroll, right? So, but now, I mean, they can't even get employment insurance if they're a seasonal
making
worker
that
anyway.
harder and harder
So,
to get.
but I mean, if you're working for $6.50 an hour or something, and hopefully it's more than that now, but who knows?
I don't know what.
And I mean, a lot of landscape business owners won't necessarily pay people
On
What?
time or ever.
So anyway, so if you're working that sort of job, you're or something else where you're doing hard labor, say you're a migrant farm worker or something like that. You're doing physical labor and you should be getting a high protein diet. If you're doing physical stuff, your body needs to repair itself every time you're but you can't necessarily afford that. If you're working for a low wage and you're working 12-hour days or some stupid thing like that, then you're not going to be able to have the time to cook for yourself, so you're eating junk and whatever's there. Honestly, you're just so tired. And so and at the same time, we have these aggressive people in our society that
way too many of them.
they wouldn't go out and do physical work to achieve their muscles and to stay physically healthy, right? So they go to a gym.
Yeah.
And then they're eating a high protein
work at
diet,
work, and then
right?
after work they go to a gym.
Yeah. It's a weird system.
Sleazy.
So what I'm trying to encourage workers to do, work for yourself, not someone else. Don't let the aggressive people exploit you. You never get ahead that way. For me, I was born, my parents had not very much land. At the time it seemed like a decent amount to start with, but they were a young couple. I think my mom was 17 when she had me. My dad was a couple years older than her. And
I think she would have been 19. I think they were married at 18. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway.
He would have been 21.
Okay.
20 when they were married.
I don't know. James knows numbers more than me.
Well, we can figure it out. You were born in 74? 75, rather.
Anyway,
Your
it
dad
doesn't
was
matter.
born in 54?
I don't
21.
care about that.
Well, okay.
I don't care about it at all.
There.
I don't care about numbers. I don't care about ages.
No?
So anyway, whatever. They were a young couple is my point. So they had my dad had bought a quarter section, I think the home quarter, and my grandpa, his dad, gave him a quarter section for a wedding gift. So I think that's all my dad had was half section. And but at the same time, that's in Peace Country in Alberta. That's where I'm from. So that's where I was born to, and my sister was born to that farm too. And there's no way that I was working to try to achieve that, and I realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to buy land back where I'm from. I had planned out how I was going to have my life, and I knew I couldn't afford to have a child. I wanted to raise a child on a farm, and I wanted to have a husband to raise a child with. And I knew I couldn't afford to have a child when I was as young as them, so I was going to work for it. And I knew I couldn't afford land where I was from. So I was going to move to another place where I could afford the land, and I was going to have a child, and I had a plan. But, you have to look at things and go, am I better off than my parents were at my age? And we know that we're not. So many people are talking about, I know I can't afford a house like my parents could afford a house, and I'm never going to be able to afford a house. So many people have come to that conclusion that they're never going to own their own house. And it's like, okay, there is something wrong with society. If you can't sustain a similar sort of existence, right? If you can't maintain a life, an actual way to live. And it's so, things have to change. You can't be working for aggressive people anymore. You can't be allowing them to exploit you. And it's going to be tough. But you can handle it. They can't. They can't handle having to do the work. You can handle having to do the work. You're doing it anyway. You're just doing it for someone else. And what do you have to show for it? What do your children have to show for it? Just try to extrapolate where things are going for them, for your family. Anyway, that's all I had to say.